In this video, we're going to build a computer. So now that I'm editing a lot more videos and I'm trying to bring more content to you guys, it's become apparent that I need to upgrade my editing equipment. My computer's not too bad, especially on the amount of videos that I've been doing in the past, but we're stepping it up. We're going to the next level with it. So it's time to go ahead and build another computer. I've been into computers for well over 20 years, 25 years, something like that, since the early 2000s. So I've built quite a few over the years. I've had different computers. I've usually had some pretty nice stuff, but I'm super excited to go all the way with this one and build it out. Much like everything that we do at Next Level Neo, I didn't cheap out. We took it pretty darn far. Obviously there are more expensive stuff out there that we didn't go quite that far, but we went pretty far. So I know what you're thinking. A computer. This is Next Level Neo. Well, hold on a minute. RGB and addressable LEDs have been huge in computers long before we were using them in cars. You buy a mainstream, tons of RGB stuff all over the place. And this build is going to be no exception. We have bought a lot of things with a focus of addressable RGBs. Now, there are a lot of different kind of RGBs on the market that you can get built into different components. Some stuff is addressable, some stuff is not. And we did the best that we could to try and ensure that we got addressable, with the ultimate goal of running this computer with a Blue Ghost. We may not do it to begin with, but in a later video, we'll probably implement that. So first off, I want to go over each of the parts that I chose for the computer. I am an Intel guy. I've been pretty big into Intel since the early 2000s. AMD was doing some different things back then, the Athlons and things like that, the Phantoms. They weren't quite up to snuff, not like the Threadrippers and the crazy stuff they've got going on now, but that kind of made me an Intel fanboy since then, and I still am today. So I had to go with the i9-139, and this is a 24-core CPU. Pretty much the top Intel mainstream CPU that you can get right now. I think the 14th gen are dropping at the end of this year. I didn't really want to wait. Plus, all the bugs are pretty much worked out of this. The new ones may have some issues and things like that I didn't want to deal with. And the reviews on this are amazing. So Intel i9-139. For the motherboard, I did want to go with RGB. Now, there are some really, really nice motherboards out there. Over $1,000 for some of them. I didn't want to go that extreme. It didn't seem like there was really a benefit to it in the build that I was doing, but I did want to have some RGB. And I also wanted to go with a name that I personally trust, and that is ASUS. So we got the Republic of Gamers, ASUS Z790H ROG Strix. Now, this is pretty much the cheapest motherboard that they sell. But if you look at the specs of the motherboard and a lot of the things that it comes with, I don't feel like I really left a whole lot on the table, at least nothing that I'm going to miss. So this was an excellent choice. It does have the RGB addressable in it and a ton of extra nice features on there that we're going to be using on this build. To cool the CPU, I went with a 360 millimeter radiator. We are doing liquid cooling, but this is a all-in-one system. And what I really liked about this one, it's got infinity mirrors on the cooler itself. Now we are replacing the fans with RGB fans. Got a set here, and actually got a set sitting out right there. Now these fans are really cool because they have infinity mirrors as well. They have them on the sides and they have them in the center of the fans. So they will light up very nice. This will light up very nice. The motherboard will light up very nice. And at least with the case with the fans and the CPU cooler, they are addressable and we are able to get outputs and inputs on all of them. So big plus when it comes to the layout of what we're going to be doing, implementing Ghost and things like that. Up next is the graphics card. Now, currently on the market, the 4090 is pretty much top dog. So once again, I'm an Intel fanboy, and when I was big into computers, Intel and NVIDIA went together very well. So I've just kind of stuck with that and went with the NVIDIA on this one. The 4090, this thing has like 16,000 GPU CUDA cores, 24 gigabytes of memory, of DDR6 memory. It does have the RGB as well. Now this one's a little different. It is addressable, but I've played around a little bit with the card to see if I can get an output or even tap into the input. And it's very difficult for me to figure out which wire goes to what. This is a $1,600 graphics card, so I didn't really want to tear it apart too much to try to figure that out. So we may not be able to tie this in with the Ghost, at least not at this point. Maybe we'll venture into that in the future, but it does have the addressable either way. It will light up, it should look great, and I can't wait to put it in. Now, normally the graphics card is laying on its side, and you can see it if you look down. Usually the fans are actually aimed down on the computer tower, so you probably wouldn't see them, which is what the RGB is. That's not gonna work. So we are doing a vertical graphics card mount. What this will do is it will invert the graphics card so the fans are facing outward on the tower. And of all the ones that I looked at, it seemed like the Coolmaster had fixed a lot of the issues that some of the other brands had, and it seemed like it was a really solid mount. So in the end, that's the one that I went with. And once again, can't wait to check that out. Now for RAM. RAM is DDR5. Super excited once again to check out the DDR5. DDR5 goes very well with the i9s, the 13th gen, and the motherboards and stuff like that. So really excited about that. 6800 clocks on these, so they are a little bit overclocked with XMP. And I got the most RAM I could get at a good clock rate. So we're gonna top out at about 96 gigs of RAM. So I have two 48 gig chips here at 6800. And according to ASUS's website, this will work at the full clock rate. For our memory, I am going with SSD. Now currently I have a 14 terabyte traditional 7200 RPM hard drive that I put a lot of my files and datas on. 14 terabytes in SSD is a very expensive purchase. So you kind of got to go with a traditional hard drive to get that much space. But for the main PC usage, I am using two SSD M2 280s. One of them I'm still waiting on. That's going to be a 4 terabyte. And that one is rated at 7,500 megabyte transfer rates. So that is still on the way. We're going to be waiting for that for a little bit. But I do have right now the 2 terabyte, which is 7,500 transfer rate as well. The motherboard has some really cool heat sinks and stuff on there to help keep these nice and cool. These can get pretty hot, especially at the high-end transfer rates like 7,500. So that was a big plus with that motherboard. It actually has it might have even been 3 M2 ports with heat sinks on the motherboard. So big plus on that. And the main port even has a heat sink along with a riser to carry the heat away even better. So super excited about that. Super excited to see what we get temp-wise and things like that. For the power supply, I went back to the brands that I've trusted in the past and went back to them again with the Corsair. 1200 watts. It's a little bit overkill for what we're doing. Probably would have been okay closer to 1,000, but the extra 2, I feel extra safe with it. 1200 watt power supply by a great brand, Corsair. Can't wait to use it. I already briefly covered the fans, but Infinity Mirror fans by Lian-Li. Super excited to get these in there as well. They do come with controllers. We'll probably use that initially, get the computer running, get everything set up, then go back and touch it up with Ghost controller. But once again, Infinity Mirrors, RGBs, everything lighting up, addressable. Super excited for these. For the keyboard and mouse, I went with the Steel Series. Both the mouse and the keyboard are addressable. I've actually got the mouse hooked up right here, and you can see it's running all unaddressable right now. Pretty cool mouse. The price was great, and I've been using it on my laptop for a few weeks, and it seems like it'll be perfectly fine for what I'm doing. There are nicer mouse out there, nicer keyboards, but I'm pretty happy with this setup. And probably most importantly, it's got all the RGB that I wanted. For the case, we are going to be using the Phanteks NV7. So I wanted something big enough with the RGB. I could put fans in it. I could lay everything out. I looked at quite a few. I actually bought a Corsair case to begin with. And then after looking a little bit deeper, I realized I couldn't do a combination of the 4090 and the AIO at 360 because there was no combination I could put it in there where it would work right. So back to the drawing board, had to look a little bit more, look deeper, and this one really caught my eye. It's really cool because it has a side glass and a front glass with a seamless trim right here. So when you can pull both of those pieces out, you get really easy access to the build process. But more importantly, when this case lights up, it's going to light up really well. Also, another factor that I really liked about it is the back side. The back side is covered. So there's a little door that pops right out. You can run all your wires down the back and down, which is going to be great because in my case, I'm probably going to have to put it on the floor under the table. And there is a small potential that moving around, walking by it, moving things around in the shop here, is something could catch on a wire that's hanging out the back of the tower. This will stop that. So that's awesome. That's a huge plus. I love the layout of it. It's very open. The airflow is going to be amazing. This thing has room for 12 fans, and I have bought 12 fans. We're getting them all in there. We're going to light the whole thing up. So including the 3 fans on the graphics card, we're going to be looking at 16 fans, 16 120 millimeter fans in this tower. Super stoked to do it. I'd also incorporate some RGB, which I thought was really cool. Now, this is one area where I am going to be doing some custom work. And on the NV7, which is the smaller version of this tower, they sell a kit that actually lights up around the case using acrylics and LEDs. Now, I've already figured out what the LEDs are on this tower. It does appear that they're SK6812s. They are definitely 5-volt GRBW or GRB color order. So I did get some strips here. These are from one of my scrap bags, something that we tested out but never ended up selling on the site, but it'll work perfectly fine in the computer here, especially being you don't need nearly as much light. Actually, you don't want anything like, I wouldn't use UCS because UCS is going to drown out everything else that's here. Computers, generally, it's lower lit areas. You're not trying to blind anybody with them. So some of the lower output lights are actually really good for computers. So I went with our side emitting RGB in a GRB color order, 5-volt, and I think it'll work really well. I will have to hand cut the acrylics on this. This tower is pretty big. That won't quite cut big enough. So we're gonna have to hand cut it, but we're gonna add it. But basically adding the kit that you can get on the NV5, and we're gonna make it for the NV7. So that in addition to the RGB that's already in it, it's got one that goes around the motherboard. We will be adding RGB along the bottom and along the top, possibly down the back. We'll see how that goes. There's not really a lot of room for it, so the back side here, maybe not. But if you're curious what I'm talking about, check out the NV5 RGB kit. If you just look at the photos of the NV5, a lot of them actually include that kit in the photo of built computers where it's lighting up the top and it's lighting up the bottom. We're basically going to be doing the same thing, but on its big brother, the NV7. Now that you get a pretty good idea of what all we got for this build, super excited, can't wait to get into it. I'm going to get the overhead camera set up and we're going to get the build process started.
So the first thing I do here is pull out the box that's inside of the back of the computer there, taking the front cover off and the side covers, taking the top, basically just tearing it down. As you can see, my son there is going to be helping out with the build. This will be his first computer, but he's a little bit of a helper for me, so it was really nice to have his help and just kind of show him the process and what's involved in it. I know I have fond memories of working on computers with my dad, so first thing, obviously, you get the processor in. I'm a little bit new to those little plastic things. I know like they're supposed to like just pop off on their own or whatever, but I just removed it by hand. Go ahead and locking down the CPU there. And now removing the heatsink for the SSD so I can install it. This is currently just the 2 terabyte. I am waiting on the 4 terabyte, and I do have 4 slots in this. So a lot of potential for growth. And you see in the RAM there. Now the RAM was kind of interesting because that it was a thing where originally I had 4 sticks. I was going to go for 128, but then I started realizing with QVL that it was not going to run at 6800, and I really wanted that better speed, so I had to go with 96 248 gig chips, and that definitely got me the speed that I wanted with a really good capacity. So at this point, we're securing it in there. I did let him do some of the screws as much as I could. As expensive as these components are, it is a little bit, cautious to what he does and doesn't do. But he did a great job. He was very careful and very respectful. So I gotta give him a lot of props for that. So I just go back over just to make sure, don't want any loose screws. So now I'm getting the AIO out and lining up the fans there for the first set. Now I did screw these down myself, but he helped me get the screws in there. Didn't want to risk, puncturing any fluid lines or something in there possibly, which I don't think I would have, but on the off chance. Removing the backing stickers just so I don't have to try to remove them after install, obviously. So I did mount the cooler on top. I did not get that in the video. I just didn't really have a good angle, so I went ahead and cut that part. But I did get him to go ahead and start installing and assembling a few more of the fans. He seemed to do a pretty good job at that and enjoy it. Flip the fan around there, but he figured it out. He got it. And now we're gonna go ahead and screw that into the back bracket for that little side panel there. And meanwhile, I'm running wires inside the computer. And once again, I'm sorry I didn't get better video footage of all of this stuff. Haven't really done any computer builds yet like this, so it was a little bit of a new experience for me there, recording it at least. Now I'm putting in the riser for the GPU, and once again this is to invert the GPU, which just makes it so you can actually see it. And now we're pretty much all assembled at this point. Now obviously this is time lapse and a lot of stuff cut out, so it was a lot more time. So the moment of truth, we fired it up. I didn't think about getting the camera ready, so sorry about that. Everything fired up, everything's running. I'll say for having 15 fans, this thing is quite a quiet computer. The GPU fans do not kick on unless the GPU starts to get hot, so that is normal. I did read about that. But you can see all that beautiful RGB in there, and there's a whole lot of stickers I've still got to remove, so it should light up even better once we get those out. You can see everything up in there. Beautiful wire tuck. This case is great. I am very happy I went with it. It was a little bit more than the first case that I was looking at, but the cable management on it is amazing. Now right now I'm on the desktop, so some of the wires are a little bit tight, but once I get it at its final location, the door will shut no problem. I can run all the wires down to the bottom. That will not be an issue. Everything is super clean, super tight. I will be going back, this is gonna be a different video, but adding in those bars to light up will be in a future video. And it will block those side infinity mirrors, but you can still see them up top, and you can still see them on the side there. so I guess it'll be all right. You can see the infinity mirrors in the middle of the fans. Those are really cool. Unfortunately, I don't have reverse fans, and they're downright difficult to find, so we will not have them for the exhaust fans, which are the 3 on the top and the 2 on the back. For those of you that are counting, I do have a little bit more intake than I do exhaust, but I don't think I'll have any positive pressure because there's still quite a bit of vents for breathing, so I don't think that'll be an issue. Obviously, I wanted to have the 3 on the bottom and the 4 on the side for the intake. And once I get the cover on this, it should do quite a good job of clearing this case out of any heat. So at this point, the only thing left to do, I'm running a memory check right now, just to make sure. It's brand new memory, there should be no issue, but it's about the only thing I can do tonight, right now. I'm gonna have to get a copy of Windows ready to go, and then we're gonna go ahead and install the OS. So we will, for us, we're gonna go to bed, go to do that tomorrow, but that'll be the next part of this video. But what do you think, buddy?
Good.
Good? I appreciate your help. He installed all the fans, and they all work. So not bad for a first computer build. There was definitely some things in here that, you know, were not necessary. The fans were a little bit more expensive than I had to go, but the infinity mirrors really drew me in. So in the end, I think it was worth the extra money to get that extra little feature. Lian-Li is a great brand. Everything I've read online, everything I've seen, reviews, everything, people I've talked to, it's good stuff. So I am happy I went with the Lian-Lis. I'm happy I went with the Phanteks case. All in all, I would say the component list is pretty good, and that will be in the description for anyone that is curious what I use, maybe see something that was really cool that you want to pick up. There'll be a list, as well as links to them, the parts on Amazon. I'm going to try out the way that the board worked, and I'm a little new to the RGB because the last time I built a computer to this scale, it didn't have quite this much RGB in it. So I'm a little bit new to that, and one of the things we found out as I was putting everything together, and I did refer to the manual quite a few times, the RGB on the motherboard. So a lot of that, and you know, a lot of you guys watching this video probably already knew that. I'm a little bit more old school. My last big PC build was a Gen 1 Intel i7 Extreme 965. That was the first built from scratch, fully loaded, everything computer. I've upgraded other computers since then. I've bought computers and towers and stuff, but I never really had the need for something extreme. So this is the first time in probably like 15 years. I don't know, whenever the i7 965 came out. Because I literally, in the middle of that build process, I had to choose between the current generation Core 2 Quad, which the top one was like $1,500 for the processor, or I could wait for the i7s, and I decided to wait for the i7s, and I'm really glad I did. The i7 was great. So I got the i7 965. I had a GTX 295. I had a 60 gigabyte solid state, and that thing was not cheap. And it was not an M2. Back then, this was 3.5-inch bay drives with SATA cables. So I just dated myself a little bit there, even more. But I have had some, obviously some newer stuff. The current setup I've got right now is an i7 9700 and 64 gigs of DDR4, and I think I got a 3060 in that. So this is going to be quite an upgrade, going from the 3060 to a 4090, going from an i7 9th gen to, I believe that's an 8-core i7 9th gen, going to a 24-core i9 13th gen. Super happy with all the parts. Once again, those parts are going to be in the description. We'll come back before the end of this video and get the OS up and running. We'll catch you tomorrow. So we got the computer done. I think it turned out pretty good. I got the software installed. I got a bunch of
little software packets, benchmarking, and stuff like that done to see where I'm landing. I'll land about middle of the pack for a computer built like this, so I'm definitely not leaving anything on the table, I don't think. Not really interested in overclocking or anything like that. I built it on the high end so that I wouldn't have to deal with any of that stuff. But the basic XMP profiles and stuff, they are working perfectly fine, so light overclocking. The component-wise, everything was pretty good. The only thing that I did not like is the graphics card lighting. So the graphics card itself, we're using the Gigabyte RTX4090 Gaming OC. And as you can see, the RGB, it's not even close to the brightness of everything else in the tower. The way that the LEDs are, they're actually in the fan and they shine outwards to the diffusers on the outside. So it's not a great design to be able to actually light up and illuminate well. And there's not really an easy way for me to change the LEDs or change something like that out. But I do have a plan. I do have something that I'm going to try to implement that'll make it run a little bit better. So look out for that video in the near future where I will be adding a little bit more color to the tower. So this was his first computer build, and I think he did a pretty good job. How did it go? How did you enjoy it?
Good.
It was good? So you're definitely going to build some computers in the future? All right, so hopefully we'll build another one for him in the future, but I was definitely glad to have him helping out on this one, learning a little bit. And I think the process went pretty good. I think overall it turned out pretty good for myself not really building a computer in a few years. I think it turned out really well. The cable management was amazing on the tower. Really happy with that. Software installed now. Everything's running great. I did have a little bit of a hiccup with the Wi-Fi. I had to use an older driver, but once I got that up and running, everything else went pretty smooth. So obviously this won't be staying on the desk here. It's going to go down under, but for now, I figured I'd set it up here so you guys can see it really good in the video there, and all the different things in there, infinity mirrors all over. I did have to move some fans around. I didn't realize the airflow direction was reverse of what I thought it was going to be, so once I plugged everything up, then I realized, oh, okay. So I did have to move some fans around and stuff to get the airflow going right, but now that everything is dialed in, everything is right, it does look really good. And I definitely plan on doing some more videos with adding in some lighting and stuff like that. Different things that we do saw on the website that'll work. I wouldn't use like UCS or anything in a tower like this because UCS is just, it's overkill. It's way too bright. But I do have some stuff that'll work really well in a computer tower. And so look forward to that video where I show you guys some of the stuff that I decided to use on that. But thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, anything like that that helps the YouTube algorithm, as well as making sure you don't miss any future videos on updates that we do to the tower. So keep an eye out for that, and thanks for watching.